This is Chip Roy. Chip Roy is carving out a space for himself to be I guess if he's the fan, he's the fan that catches turds. He's the one, when shit hits the fan, it's going to be Chip Roy. And he's the one that they are pushing out there and going, you say all the dipshit economic stuff that we don't actually believe / understand. Because you pretend, like, he pretends he understands and pretends it's a good idea. It's kind of stunning. This is him on Kudlow. I just saw his speech on the floor, so I don't doubt there'll be a little bit. But this is because they want to, for those of you who don't know, they've introduced this bill and they want to pass it. They're never going to pass it, but they want to vote on it. And it very well may get every Republican. I doubt it. But when they bring it to it, they want to just be able to put some tape of themselves on the floor during this process so they can rise and be seen while this bill's on the floor, and it'll act like they actually passed it to their constituents in these shitty little weird QAnon districts. And so that's why they want these things. These are just, they think they're printing ads for themselves. They are, but for their opponent, and that's another thing later. So they want to get rid of the income tax and the IRS, replace all the taxes in the country with a 30% sales tax on everything. People below the poverty threshold will get a credit for necessary items and the tax on necessary items below a certain point. It will be up to the states to decide what qualifies as necessary. Yeah, so good luck with that. State houses are going to be determining what qualifies as food for poor people. Some of them will make it only the healthiest of foods and only fresh foods and no processed foods, and you have to learn to cook and be a real person, blah, 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 and that's how they'll try to help. Others will insist on the cheapest, shittiest food you could possibly find so that they'll poison these folks over time with cancer and all kinds of stuff. It's just ridiculous. But the middle class would be completely fucked by this. They would have no way out, and they're the biggest consumer base. They pay for everything already. And then the upper 10% buy a lot of their shit outside the country. And what you're going to see is a lot of private planes and a lot of yachts that are all registered in the Bahamas from now on. That because they were purchased out of country. Yeah. And probably in a country that had a VAT tax, but they get refunded that VAT tax from there. So anyways, I think this is the
All right, welcome back. You heard some pretty pessimistic economic numbers in the last segment.
Yes. And this, by the way, is Larry Kudlow. And that's all he does right now. He takes whatever economic data comes out and tries to make it look like shit, even as the stock market remains at 33K and is on its way up.
Now the question is, can House Republicans possibly rescue the economy, which looks like it's going to need rescuing? So
it looks like it's going to need, apparently it doesn't need rescuing now, but it looks like it's going to need rescuing from...
Let us ask Congressman Chip Roy from Texas.
Congressman. Yeah.
Chip Roy, welcome back.
And he's got a copy of, he doesn't have his own book, so he's got Rick Perry's book up there. Isn't that nice?
Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it. I don't know if you...
Yeah, he wasn't busy crafting legislation.
Heard any of the numbers out today? Everything fell. Retail sales fell. Manufacturing fell. Business investment fell. It's not a good story. All right.
No, it's terrible. It's just everything's falling and dying and death and destruction and sad and broken.
Having said that,
most of my friends make money when things crash. It's we look forward to the dip, but you being a dip probably don't.
We'd love to cut spending and taxing and regulating. Let me get you. Have you seen this White House press memo attacking you guys? You haven't really put your policies up yet. They're saying
they've put up the commitment to America, and they've actually posted the bill that they want to vote on. And they've been talking about it for a while, and everybody in the House knows, like all the Democrats know, they can see the legislation these assholes are putting forward. They've seen the drafts. They're on committees too.
Republicans want to increase gas prices because you don't like to sell Spro, I guess. You're going to protect the rich tax cheats because of the IRS. You're going to raise taxes on the middle class. That's the fair tax. And on top of all...
Yeah, it's fair. The middle class should continue to pay for everything. They should just have to do more of that.
All that, Chip, you're going to cut Social Security and Medicare.
Now, here's the problem. Chip Roy wants to cut Social Security and Medicare. He wants to. That's a box Kudlow puts him in. So he's not going to give Kudlow that, no, we don't, that's a lie, kind of standard lie from Republicans.
The White House notes from the press office. I just want to give you a chance to rebut all this stuff.
Interesting how, by the way, on MSNBC and CNN, the phrase I always hear is, this is what they're saying, I want to give you a chance to respond. You guys notice that? Is it just me? I want to give you a chance to respond to this. This is what they're saying. What's your response? What do you respond to? Like, even the Chuck Todds and the, like, Katie Turs to some degree and Andrea Mitchell's talk like that. Kudlow is bringing Chip Roy on for Republican damage control, which is nuts to begin with. It just shows how, detached from reality Kudlow is. But notice he said debunk.
Well, Larry, good to be on as always. And look, that's the playbook Democrats always use, right? They go back to the same old well. And what we're actually about is trying to free up the American people from the stranglehold that the federal government has placed on them.
Yes, your Social Security checks are a burden, old people. And if you were just free to die, you'd know that life was really worth living. You'd never appreciate it more than when you're on the edge of a can of cat food with a spoon.
Done that a number of ways. One, dumping trillions of dollars into the economy in the name of COVID, which caused most of this inflationary mess in the first place.
Okay, first of all, that was under Donald Trump as well. And again, $6 trillion to patch a $20 trillion hole. If what he's saying was true about monetary inflation, the dollar would be at 80 cents right now. It is not. There are not enough dollars in circulation, even with extended UI for a year and a half. This is a dead talking point. It's been a dead talking point for a long fucking time. And our current inflation, like, the measures were about fuel costs because of the war, the supply chain being, and the shock from it being basically snapped during COVID. And then going forward, moving away from, having factories in China and moving them someplace else, the costs ensued there. That's all going to be part of the extra cost you're going to see in things. Never mind fucking eggs, which is caused by an outbreak of avian flu.
Crowding out private investment, limiting the ability of the private...
That's what it is. Private investment can't compete with the federal dollars that are coming in, because once the Fed comes in, there's all the profits are eaten up.
Private sector to go forth and conquer and to produce prosperity and wealth and manage the market the way it's supposed to, not without the government interfering. And
also, that's like a piece from like Ayn Rand Cliff Notes, but does not fucking pertain to any detail that he gives or that he's given so far anyways.
Importantly, we shouldn't be spending money we don't have to...
Okay, he has a mortgage. Larry has shit tons of debt. Shut the fuck up. And like this, we shouldn't be spending money we don't have. Everyone with a mortgage and whose kids are going to college and who have a car payment is technically spending money they don't have yet. And you pay interest on that money so that you can borrow it from someone now because you'll have it eventually, but you don't want to have to pay off a $46,000 car over your entire lifetime.
To fund the alphabet soup of regulations that is strangling our economic growth.
All right. Also, you're not funding regulations. That's just weird. How many inspectors does he think are actually out there on the beat? Is it a 1-to-1 with every business person and employee on the fucking planet?
You mentioned it right before this segment, where you're talking about all of the climate change.
I did. I didn't realize. Bourbon.
And the woke regulations that are strangling the ability of the American people to do their job. That's
Again, what woke regulation is keeping you from doing your fucking job? As a matter of fact, the only woke regulations they seem to be railing against are ones where people refuse to do their fucking job. I bake cakes and I do wedding cakes and birthday cakes, but I ain't doing no gay wedding. It's not the woke regulations that's keeping you from working. Your bigotry is keeping you from working, and the regulation is saying, bake a fucking cake and sell it, asshole.
That's, I think, the important part that's missing here. We're all about empowering the American people, all levels across the entirety of the spectrum, and make sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're just trying to, that's the problem. Americans are strong, but right now they've been made weak by the federal government and the overreach. Because you know what's stopping drivers from really getting where they're going? Traffic lights and yellow lines. We need to free them up. Okay? These federal regulations about staying on your side of the street when you're going 70 miles an hour, if you have to even go 70 miles an hour, I could get there 100 miles an hour if my truck's big enough and my horn's loud enough. Fuck them.
Sure that they can go create wealth and opportunity rather than having the government doing what it's doing right now, which is what it always does. My entire lifetime, government is the problem. We need to.
No, it isn't. Chip Roy's full of shit. The government, Chip Roy is alive right now because of regulations. There are a ton of regulations just around traffic, airlines, food safety, fucking hospital sanitation rules, the structural integrity of buildings, fucking cleanliness of standard water pipes. The fuck out of here. Chip Roy, would be dead without these regulations. Period. End of fucking story. Chip Roy thinks that, and I genuinely believe this. Chip Roy is one of the people who believes in the China miracle. He thinks they really are just like, they don't have all these rules and they just build shit and it's fucking awesome. Never mind the fact that they built an industrial ring of factories around Beijing, had no rules about the air filtration and getting the pollution down from any of those factories. So it literally meant that no matter which way the wind blew, toxic fumes were blowing across Beijing. It did not matter. East, west, north, south, northeast to southwest. It didn't matter. There was always some smog to blow straight into the center of the city. And the heat from the outer ring would trap it there. That's what Chip Roy wants.
To get that out of the way, stop spending money we don't have.
Money we don't have. Jesus Christ. Dude, you literally... If he's got a mortgage and he probably pays rent as well, which means he doesn't have the money to buy a house because he's renting. I mean, at what point does this fucking analogy just croak? But all of his clothes are bought with money he doesn't have. But that he's going to have at some point, and that you can pay it off over time.
So we just want to put common sense reforms in place, limits.
Yes, common sense. Common sense. It depends on what kind of commons we're talking about.
Spending at FY22 levels at the top line. You can have the defense spending you need to defend us against China. Limit the non-defense discretionary, drop that down to pre-COVID levels. Boom, you're cooking with peanut oil. You cut the money from the bureaucrats, you fund your defense, and you get out of the way of the American people.
Yeah, listen.
Which is almost, and by the way, you cannot do that and not raise the debt ceiling. That the pre-COVID levels, Donald Trump's cost for the government, his deficit, his yearly deficit, was higher than Biden's. If you go back to that, and they were climbing because they needed to, because he was artificially trying to choke them down because they were just slashing internally. That's why they thought they could solve some shit. Or they were just kind of undercutting DHS and national defense, and that was part of his fucking pro-Russia plan, very possibly. But in general, if you go back to those dates, we're still going to have to raise the debt ceiling, not just this year, but next year too. The deficit under Biden will have to be raised if we want 2019 numbers.
I mean, our friend Kevin Hassett, former CEA chair, has suggested, first of all, make a fight on the debt ceiling. And I'm with him on that. Make a fight. There has to be a showdown.
By the way, that's because Larry Kudlow knows that it can't last. It'll be a temporary thing. But if you drag it out and it does fuck the market, he can buy in on a bunch of shit. He and his rich buddies can totally float through it. They just think, this time, a week, they can get through a week. But if you go to 2 weeks, the fucking market will take a giant shit, and you got the Democrats over a barrel. And what we'll do is we'll have a bunch of cash on hand because you'll tell us that you're going to do it and for how long, and we'll know exactly the day to buy back in. Because that's a huge part of this, is that this coordination between rich fucks like Kudlow and Hannity and all these guys with the Chip Roys of the world knows that they know, makes it so that they know the exact timing of the debt limit fight. So they can play the fucking, monetary reaction and the market reaction like a fucking fiddle because they've got the sheet music.
So for every dollar increase in debt, cut spending by $3. Last night, your colleague Scott Perry was on the show, and he said, fine, how about cutting spending by $4? And I'm saying, okay, that's great. Joe Biden doesn't even want to talk to you all.
And by the way, Perry says that because he's serious about it. He just wants to sound like all of it's unnecessary. The federal government is unnecessary. The U.S. government does nothing but wrong. And again, he and Perry would both be dead a long time ago if it wasn't for all the protections the federal and the state governments provided him over the course of their fucking life. And just fucking seatbelts alone, which these dickheads are like, we need to repeal that shit so other people can die. Everybody who walks up to you and says, when I was a kid, we didn't have any of these rules. It was this. We used to, you didn't helmets and fucking seatbelts and child seats and fucking all. We didn't have any of that shit. Yeah, you know what we also had at that point? A lot fewer people. It's very interesting if you look at when government regulations started to be taken seriously and amounted to fucking something, how quickly the population rose. Because more people survived childhood and car accidents and plane flights. Thank you, look, Kara. Appreciate that.
As far as I can tell.
Kara.
Kevin McCarthy is willing to go to the White House and talk and negotiate. And
right. He's the speaker. And Biden will be talking to him about this stuff because he's the Speaker of the House. Why he would talk to the Sedition Caucus about any of this shit when they don't have the other 90% of their own fucking party on board is dumb. Not their problem. Biden and Harris both passed a great portion of their wish list for this 4-year presidency already. There are very few things they have to negotiate with these dickheads on. Because if they just roll a CR next year and the year after, which is more than likely what's going to happen, there will be plenty of money to fund everything, and then things will continue to roll smoothly. And talking to like the dig in your heels caucus is like, Rand Paul and others like him in the Senate for years have done basically silent filibusters. They put holds on shit Ted Cruz does it too. They don't put their name on it. They don't go, I, Ted Cruz, am holding up this thing or this bill or whatever. They say it on the down low, on the side. And then, so they never get called out for, why is this not going through? They can hide behind that. The White House knows this. The Trump White House knew this. The Obama White House knew this. Bush knew it. It's a regular thing. But you're not going to sit down with those people and have them dial it back, because there is no open conversation about it. You have it with the leadership. And the leadership is supposed to whip their people.
Biden is saying no. Biden doesn't want to even acknowledge there's a Republican House now. So,
yeah, there isn't. You squeaked by, and it was largely by gerrymandered districts. And even in the new gerrymandered districts, what did you get? You got George Santos, fucko. You got a bunch of noisemakers. People who they want to be on committees shouting with their jacket off at people who are innocent of the charges that they're putting forward, while back home, people like Jim Jordan have like rape scandals that they have avoided talking about.
what do you think about the debt ceiling? Tomorrow's it's not the end of the world, but tomorrow the debt hits its own limit. I mean, you're going to make a stand on that. And I think it probably would help the economy, frankly. Maybe I'm wrong, but
he's wrong. But it would help his economy. Let's understand that. And this is a story, by the way, as Democrats, and that Democrats in the House and the Senate and even in the White House, I recommend to anyone who's listening, and I know you do sometimes, I recommend you remind everyone that, of course, people like Trump and Kudlow and Sean Hannity and the Fox News people and the people that run it and Rupert Murdoch and all that crowd want these guys to crash the economy because they don't believe it'll be permanent and they know they can buy the dip. While everyone else is struggling, while Social Security checks don't get out, while VA checks don't go out, while the credit rating of the entire fucking country hangs in the balance, these motherfuckers are opportunistic investors looking to basically short the fucking United States, while, I might add, wrapping themselves in the fucking flag.
Go with it.
Yeah, I think there's no question that it would help the economy. Look, people that start hand.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, and yeah, there's a lot of questions. And the idea that you think there's no question, you're a fucking moron.
Bringing about the whole default on the debt. We're not going to default on the debt. We can prioritize debt. In fact, current law allows for the prioritization of paying your debt payments. We're not going to default. They do this all the time. And in fact, the reason that the Democrats are hitting the gas to do the fear mongering.
The scaremongering. By the way, this will probably happen June, July, around that time, that they're going to actually have to raise the debt limit to deal with this. The prioritization of spending would happen between now and then, so that you wouldn't have to, or you could punt when you had to. They're not doing any of that. The House is in session. The Republicans are in control of it, and none of them are presenting ways specifically they're literally presenting bills that will go fucking nowhere, like wiping out the IRS and replacing it with a VAT tax. It's cartoonish. But none of them are in committees doing, line budget lowering for the stuff next year so that they can leverage money they're going to have from next year to pay down some of the debt this year, which keeps it from having to go up. None of that is happening.
Scare tactics is because they saw us successfully wrestle control of the message 2 weeks ago, work with Kevin McCarthy, work a deal where we could agree that we were going to make spending restraint our top priority to make sure that we limit the spending.
No, they are not creating a message because you were successful in making Kevin McCarthy look like an idiot. They are talking about the reality that Kevin McCarthy is being controlled by a minority of assholes in his own party who want ill for the United States and are happy to mask that ill in patriotism.
that is currently funding the bureaucrats that are funding woke, weaponized, and wasteful spending, undermining the American people. We should use the debt ceiling to limit that spending. And then we should be on offense talking about what this means for the American people. Again, you can't gloss over what you just said about the climate change, worshiping and the woke policies that are under.
Yeah, I didn't gloss over it. I kind of, like, my eyes glazed over. It's the same fucking bullshit.
Undermining our ability to create wealth.
But again, what about that is undermining our ability to create wealth? Isn't it just other areas to make wealth if you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you're strong and resilient?
Right here in Texas, we're going to be looking at 50%.
Oh, okay, because he's from an oil and gas state.
Of our grid being wind and solar by the end of 2023. And I'm sure all the green folks are clapping. But you know what that means? You don't have reliable power when you end up with a big winter storm or a heat wave in the summer.
By the way, according to this asshole, eventually Texas isn't going to have reliable power. Someday. That's a danger.
We need to make sure we've got the right policies to create wealth and create economic opportunity for the American people. We've got those policies, and it starts with spending restraint in Washington. Stop spending money we don't have.
Yeah, again, that stop spending money we don't have nonsense is... And by the way, there's ways to get it. You can raise taxes on billionaires.
You know, Chip, if you see a recession coming, and the numbers today had a definite recession feel to them, this thing could...
They had a definite recession feel to them. Motherfucker, I thought we had one last year. Aren't we still in one from fucking 2 quarters of negative growth, or right? Of lower growth in a row? Weren't we supposed to have... Didn't we have a recession last year? We still don't fucking have one?
Could come on faster. I don't know, but they were bad numbers. I'd want to cut spending. I'd want to cut taxing.
Yeah, but you worked with the last guy, and he fucking lost.
I'd want to cut regulations. Okay? Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, that seems simple enough. Just cut that stuff. Cut spending. Okay, what spending? Well, obviously, I mean, you got to go after the big ones. You have to just pare down Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Those are your biggest ones. Obviously, after that, defense is the next biggest part of it. The rest of the discretionary budget wouldn't make a fucking dent. Boom. What regulations? The ones that keep banks from getting into the credit default swap business again? What regulations? What the fuck? Also, these aren't, and the anti-development regulations that happen a lot, LA has some of the worst, that keeps people from building apartment buildings. Leftover earthquake shit from decades ago. Never mind the modern, the modern architectural and engineering feats that have been created in the last few decades that allow you to build safe, responsive architecture in earthquake zones. They're still using the same rules about building, length of time for, going through a project and testing it that are back from the 50s. That's a city one. There's no federal regulation would affect that. And that's how most big cities, especially, and their suburban outlays, like, unless you write a law that's a new regulation that forces development on cities, which if the Republicans want to float that shit, go for it. The fuck is, what regulations? What? Nobody can vote twice.
Tax cuts, John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump. Heck, I'll go all the way back to Warren Harding and Calvin Coolidge.
By the way, somewhere in the order of 30% of our national debt was created during the Trump administration. Part of it was COVID. The other part of it was his unpaid for tax cut, which triggered a recession, and it's why he was screaming at the Fed to give us negative interest rates. Talk about printing fucking money.
They cut spending and cut taxes and reduced debt. and got us out of the post-World War I deep recession.
What? Hold on. Reagan, Trump, and because he mentioned Kennedy, Reagan, Trump, and Bush got us out of the fucking post-World War I? Fuck.
Biden doesn't seem to want to talk to you.
That's because he doesn't have to, stupid. He's supposed to talk to Kevin McCarthy. You guys are supposed to talk to Kevin McCarthy. And Kevin McCarthy is supposed to bring his priorities and what he thinks he can get through to the president. That's why he's the Speaker of the House. Biden certainly can talk to anybody in the House. He's too busy. It's the fucking presidency. He'll get on the phone with senators because that's a fewer group, that's a smaller group, and you have to massage fewer people. But if you start talking to like House members to get shit passed, Jesus Christ, that's all you fucking do.
The thing that amazes me.
Yes, the debt ceiling was created in World War I. Yeah.
There's no reset. He just thinks he's going to get a clean debt bill. It's like you all don't exist. I don't understand that.
It's because there's 20 of them, and only 10 of them are hardliners. And the rest of them, including the ones that are feuding with Kevin McCarthy right now, have giant investment portfolios and do not want to see their net worth fucking crash because of a couple of dickheads in low-res districts.
Well, there's no question that this isn't going to be like Bill Clinton after the 1994 contract with America, where he kind of came in and what did he say? He said the Arab.
That's because that was a huge sweep. You guys won this because of fucking gerrymandering and Santos level lies. Dude, they've looked at the numbers. The Biden White House is looking at the numbers. They know how many House members have legal problems, not the least of which George Santos, and how narrow the fucking margin is. They lose 3 of these motherfuckers. It's a wash.
Big government is over. The people around Joe Biden are going to continue to drive this leftist reimagining of America, this new world order that allows for wide open borders, clamping down on American energy independence, stifling growth and opportunity while increasing the size of government.
Yeah, that's there is no open border. Transitioning out of fossil fuels while, especially moving to gas was largely began in the Obama administration. Meanwhile, I guess this guy thinks Elon Musk is an asshole for making electric cars at this point.
American people want the opposite of that. The House.
We want a tiny little government that almost any country in the world could buy off with their spare fucking change. And we want the whole country to be turned into one giant oil field. Fuck the aquifers. Who cares if Texas has had its first fucking earthquakes? Hold on. Okay. This is fun. Here you go. It's just a bunch of. It's a Texas earthquake. This is Carlsbad, New Mexico, Hennessy, Oklahoma. Where's let's see news? Boink. And West Texas oil patch. A boom in drilling has led to a growing number of earthquakes. There it is. Earthquakes that have rocked the region have been tied to the area's booming oil industry. In the past few weeks, the West Texas oil patch has been rocked by 2 5.4 magnitude earthquakes. This is in December. People reported feeling the quakes hours away in big cities. In November, one of the quakes hit near the small town of Orla, where big rigs barrel up and down the highway every day, hauling everything from oil and gas to water and sand. The region is one of the most active parts of the Permian Basin oil field, and it's where a lot of Permian drilling activity has been centered in recent years. This far-flung corner of the state has also lately been a hotbed of earthquakes. At the Armadillo Hotel, yummy, in Orla, a dusty lot with rows of trailers where roughnecks sleep between shifts. I mean, I'm digging this novel. If that's the opening sentence, you'll have me to the last page. And Angeles Juntas said she felt last month's earthquake. She worked here for a year, she said, and the quake center just a few miles away was the first one she'd noticed. I was more shocked. I was like, I didn't know we could get them out here. And then I had my coworkers tell me, oh yeah, you get used to it. By the way, so far, and we'd have to check in, well, we could check in with Portland, but they're gone. Maybe Seattle. No correlation between hydroelectric, nuclear, wind, and solar as far as earthquakes go.
House Republicans were given the majority for a reason. We need to go.
Yes, because they gerrymandered 2 states.
A message to the American people.
Yeah. Again, the Freedom Caucus is bigger than these 20 or 10 holdouts that were holding McCarthy's ass to the fire. And and they're just from redder districts. They're from safe districts. So of course they huff their own farts.
That we can constrain government, empower them, create wealth and opportunity, and drive our truck right through this and out of this recession if you stop getting government in the way. Again,
how is government in the way? Again, even in oil and gas, there's fucking 9,000 leases out there. Government is not in the way. The desire of the American citizens to drink clean fucking water is in the way. The regulation is there for a fucking reason.
Inflation was caused by government action.
No, it was not.
That's what happened. We saw it.
That's not what happened. Chip Roy is out of his fucking mind, as is Larry Kudlow. If is he nodding?
Trillions of the economy.
He's not. He's not even. Again, you can't plug a $20 trillion hole with $6 trillion. Secondly, if it was true what he was saying, the dollar wouldn't be worth shit right now.
Under COVID. First of all, let's learn our lesson about COVID. Don't use emergency powers to destroy the great.
In an emergency. Yeah. How dumb? This dumb.
Greatest economy in the history of the world. But we can salvage that by re-empowering the American people and getting government.
It's already been salvaged, dummy. Honestly. Dems anti-growth policies. For fuck's sake, there are more factories coming online this year than in the last 4 fucking decades of the United States.
Out of the way. And absolutely on taxes. Look, last year we brought in how much? $4.x trillion of revenue, the highest in history. Mm-hmm. Like, we've got revenue, but we've got a massive spending problem, and we've got to get our arms around it. And that's what we got a commitment to do. And that's what House conservatives are pushing the entire conference to do. And credit to Kevin.
Oh, you got revenue coming in? So why don't you just kick that back? If it's a spending problem, obviously, you know what'll solve this is a giant tax cut.
We're all working together to try to do that. And I think we're going to take a message to the White House that's very clear.
No, you're not. Kevin McCarthy will have a nervous, weird, stammery, dickhead conversation with Biden while Biden's kind of grinning at him. And after he leaves, he'll say something along the lines of what he said about Peter Doocy.
I mean, you got so much, record revenues. You're absolutely right. It's over $4 trillion.
Oh, yeah. We call that the Biden boom, Larry.
20% of GDP. I think it's a historic record. You got revenues to pay the interest on the bonds. You got revenues to pay. So there's no issue here about default and all that. I would say you want to deal with the recession, make the government.
By the way, the recession that isn't here yet, but is definitely going to happen because Larry thinks it already happened.
Government sector smaller and the private sector larger.
So the government is responsible for making the private sector larger. How do they do that? Do we have regulations? The government now enforcing the creation of companies? Invent America, or we will tax you.
I believe somebody once called that free market capitalism.
No, free market capitalism happens whether the government does anything or fucking not.
Heaven forbid.
Again, heaven forbid. Like, what is Trump like? Ludlow's king. What does Trump make? What's he actually make right now? Besides like picture books of photos he stole off Instagram. What does he make? All of his new projects. Somebody else is building them. Somebody else is funding them. He's getting a fee to slap his name on them. What's he selling besides classified documents?
Well, that's exactly right, Larry. And look, I think what the American
I said free market capitalism, good freedom, freedom.
people are going to see through all of this is if you stop spending money that you don't have to fund bureaucrats
Oh, fucking hell, I'm tired of
that
this.
are driving you crazy, whether it's the FBI, whether it's the EPA, whether it's the SEC, whether it's Lena Khan and the FCC, which you were just talking.
Right, okay. He wants to defund the Security and Exchange Commission. That's why Larry Kudlow's having him on. Yeah. So let me give you a quick encapsulated view of what we saw in this video. Was Chip Roy meeting with Larry Kudlow in a little coffee shop they call Fox Business, and he says we're going to kneecap the economy. It'll definitely have a market effect. We can hold it for 12 days. It's normally 4 or 5, but we can hold it to 12. By the 8th day, you'll see a market dip and a real hit. That's when you buy in. And then as soon as you give us the go-ahead, we'll turn the lights back on. And then while we're at it, if they figure it out, if they go after us, we'll get our folks that are on committees to talk about defunding the SEC so they can't afford to look. Dude, it's a fucking rig. That's what this is. And they're just, I guess they think people won't notice. Look at Kudlow's next video. America does not have enough prosperity. Well, how would you know? I mean, at what point, how do you know when you have too much prosperity?
Talking about, then you're going to free up the American people to do their job. Give us energy independence.
By the way, they apparently freeing up the American people to do their job. Their job is to work your ass off for companies that these guys can exploit on the stock market and manipulate through economic policy to enrich themselves.
Stop regulating to death. Get the tax structure so that we can free people up, but stop deficit spending to fund bureaucracy and woke weaponized government, and we'll win the message.
Thank you.
Yeah, you won't. If that's the tail off of the fucking message at the end, nope, not happening. That's the structure. That's the plan. That's what they think they're going to be selling.